In this video, we're going to look at how to graph a circular function, in this case cosine, and its reciprocal. So as with any of these kind of reciprocal function questions, exam questions, it'd say something like graph the function f of x, and then the part B would be graph its reciprocal. So what we have to do first is graph the function f of x. So I've got here 2 cosine of x plus 5 on 2. So when I'm graphing these circular functions, sine and cos, I like to draw in the midline first. You don't have to, but it just kind of guides your drawing later. So I'm going to do that. So it's 5 on 2, which is what? It'd be 2.5, right? So if that's 2, that's 4. 2.5 would be here. So I'm just going to draw in a dotted line along here. This is what my graph is oscillating around. That's going to help me draw it. Also, this question, if this was an exam question, it'd say something like draw it between what it'd be like, draw it between negative 2 pi and 2 pi for x values between negative 2 pi and 2 pi. So if I think about cosine, right, it's also got an amplitude of 2. So normally it would just go 1 above that midline, but it's going to go 2 above that midline. So that's 2.5, isn't it? So where would we be? 2 plus that would be 4.5. So probably, let's say it's there. That's 4.5. Which I'm just going to write as the fraction because we're actually going to need that eventually. So what? 4.5 would be 9 on 2. Yeah. And then it'd go down to 0.5 or half. So that would be here. Just going to draw that in as a half. Now, if I think about cosine, it looks, I always think about it from the kind of start of the y-axis, right? So here's y, here's x, and it starts up top and goes down and up. Looks like that. I mean, that's a pretty crude drawing, but helps me think about where it's going to go. So it's going to start up here at its maximum. Then by the time it gets to pi, it's going to be at its minimum. So its minimum, we said, was a half. So we've got a point there. We're going to label it pi, x value is pi, y value is a half. And at 2 pi, it's at 9.5 back at its maximum. So that's what? So it's here. So it's 2 pi, comma 9.5. And at negative 2 pi, same deal. I'm just going to say it's probably more like there, right? Just get rid of that. Try and make it nice. So negative 2 pi at 9.5 as well. And at minus pi, it's also at a half. It's got a minimum there. Where are we? Minus pi, half. Okay, so from there I can kind of graph it. Like I've got the maximums and the minimums in. It's not going to hit the x-axis, so we don't have any intercepts. And just do my best to graph it in a kind of wavy way that we know cosine looks like. So I'm going to do my best. Something like that for the positive side, and for the negative side, it should be symmetric. There we go, not bad. So we've drawn in f of x, and we can label it f of x. Now we've got to draw in the reciprocal. So normally we would look for x-intercepts and we'd put asymptotes there. In this case, there are no x-intercepts, so we don't have to worry about that. And then we move straight on to looking at maxima and minima. So everywhere there's a maximum on our red graph, for our blue graph, 1 on f of x, there should be a minimum. So at the start at x equals 0, well, y was 9 on 2. So the reciprocal of that for our reciprocal function is 2 over 9. I happen to know that 1/9 is 0.11111, like as in it's 0.1 recurring. So 2/9 must be 0.2 recurring. So if that's a half, 0.2 recurring would be about there. So we'll just label that as 2/9. So that's where our minima are going to be. Well, so we'll also have one for over at minus 2 pi. want it here, so it'll be minus 2 pi 2/9. And over here, we're going to have 2 pi, positive 2 pi 2/9. And so as for our minima on our red graph, on our reciprocal function, the blue graph, it'll be the reciprocal of a half. Reciprocal of a half is 2. So at minus pi, we get minus pi 2 as one of our maxima. And at pi, we get 2 as our maxima. And what that's going to be there. Now, here's kind of the tricky bit. So you've got in your maxima and minima, and you've got to kind of imagine what it's going to look like to do your best to draw it. And this is sort of tricky. The way to think about it is the gradient, right? So if I look at the gradient, say near my leftmost minimum, I can see that the gradient of the red graph is originally pretty shallow, pretty close to flat, right? And then it gets pretty steep pretty quickly. And then at the end, it's also quite steep until it flattens out. So I want to do the reverse of that, seeing as it's a reciprocal function. So it's going to look something like flatten out at the top and then go down again. And then same again, something like this. Oh, I forgot to put in my other one. Where's that point? It's at down there, right? Oh no, down there, because it's 2/9, not a half. Just drop that off. And then I can draw the last bit of my graph. So it kind of looks like a different kind of cosine, but it's a bit kind of shallower. But anyway, there is your graph of 1 over f of x, 1 over 2 cos of x plus 5 on 2, and how to graph it. So let's leave it there.